Hey everybody, it's your girl Love Lisa, and you're listening to WIMG 1300 AM Great Gospel Station in Trenton, New Jersey, and you're also viewing us on WPHY TV Mercer. And I'm excited because in the encounter room we have none other than this beautiful woman right here. She is running, yes, you heard it, you read it. She is running for President of the United States of America for the Independent Party. Welcome, Jade Simmons. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for making room to be able to talk about my vision for this nation today. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Oh, first of all, President of the United States.
Yeah. That's PTA, right? Not when we first launched, it was hilarious because we were creating the website and getting everything ready behind the scenes. And when we launched, it's like people couldn't wrap their heads around it. So we kept going, is it not clear on the website? Like we must have changed our profile picture how many times, enlarged the word president, but it was funny that people just couldn't fathom that this person that for the most part they'd never heard of would dare to lean into this moment. And that's what we're doing. Our promise was that we would stay standing until the end so that people who have felt powerfully underrepresented until this point would be able to go to the polls with power and passion and finally not feel like they're choosing the lesser of two evils. So we're very proud to still be standing. Been running since January. So it's a blessing to make it to your show at this point in time.
Listen, when I first heard of you, and that probably was about February, March, and when Laura sent me over the information, and I'm like, wow, where has she been? But you've been there. You've actually been around, and, you're not just, someone who's running for president, but, you also are a Rice University graduate, right?
Yeah.
And, as well as, a mother, a wife, you are a concert pianist, you are a woman of God, a prayer warrior, I want to say. I saw your page.
Yeah.
A woman of faith, a woman with a vision, and in your heart, you believe that God has called you for such a time as this to run for President of the United States of America.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what it is in a nutshell. I'm a businesswoman as well. I'm a small business owner. So like so many Americans, when COVID-19 hit, we felt it, and we had decided, I say we because this is not something you do on your own. This is not an I journey. So I often say what we're going to do and we this, and people say, you're running for president. But the truth is, if you've really understood what being the head of anything is, you understand right away that it's not just about you. And so one of the things we knew right away is we didn't want to look like anything that had come before us. My husband and I have been talking about this for years. And honestly, our timeline was much later down the road, but you know how the guy upstairs sometimes messes with your calendar. At the beginning of the year, I felt very clearly that it wasn't a later moment, that now was the time. And then as I watched things like COVID-19 hit and the outbreak from the murder of George Floyd, those served as confirmation after the fact that this was a moment we could not afford to do politics as usual. So I do come to you unapologetically as a non-politician. Okay. I know the guy in office said the same thing, but it's very different. Let's just jump to the elephant in the room there. Yeah. It's very different than what he was describing. I believe it's time now for America to have someone in office who knows what it's like to live this American life. And so I run proudly with the qualifications I do bring to the table as a businesswoman, as a sought after communicator and professional speaker. And yes, even as an artist. I mean, we need creative, collaborative solutions like never before. And so I believe even that is going to power some of the decisions and the policy that we've been proposing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. When I told people I was going to interview you, some people they weren't happy about it. They were upset.
No.
They called you divisive. They said that you, and I'm like, hold on, there's always been four parties. So why all of a sudden is it divisive that this young woman who feels that she has a call from God and wants to really make an impact and a difference and show the world what it can look like when a country who says that in God we trust actually trusts God?
We've been conditioned, Lisa. You know, it used to annoy me so much when those questions would come my way. You're gonna split the vote. Where have you been? You should run for PTA first. Go sit down. Who do you think you are? I mean, the list goes on. But the truth is a couple of things, and I know that many of your listeners are believers as well. And it's a time for us to kind of look in the mirror and ask ourselves, are we just out here quoting scripture because it sounds good and it looks good on Facebook when we post it? Or are we ready to live it? And if we're ready to live it, that means that we are ready to take action for such a time as this, that we don't cower to fear. We don't silence ourselves when we see injustice. You know, we serve a God of justice. So why don't we have more voices coming forward and saying, you know what? I know I spent the last 20 years as a teacher, but it's time for me to get in here and educate this nation. I know I've spent the last 30 years as a doctor, but it's time for me now to do some surgery on this nation. I know that I've spent my life as a musician, as a communicator, as a solutions bringer. I'm brought in by some of the world's top organizations, one of the most sought after speakers in the nation. And they bring me in to do what? Lead them through periods of incredible change. They say, Jade, listen, we need transformation in our organization. We need our leaders to lead differently. What more do we need right now than transformation in our nation, leadership, powerful communication, and restoration where race relations is concerned? If we move forward with what I call, really the president to me operates more like an instigator in chief, I don't think we can get through these times being reconciled on the other end. If we lead from a place of absenteeism, which is what I feel like right now, Vice President Biden doesn't have the power and the voice and the clarity to lead into the next era we need to be in. It's going to be politics as usual. And people talk about COVID, but we had economic issues before COVID. We had race issues before George Floyd. And those things haven't been dealt with powerfully up until this point because politics has always gotten in the way. And I believe Americans want solutions now, and they want someone who's going to prioritize people over politics. And that's one of the reasons that I'm leaning into this moment right now.
One of the reasons, and I'm going to ask you this question, and I'm going to, tell you what I feel about it, but, why should people look at your platform? And the reason why I looked at your platform and when I did, because I want to be able to vote for someone November 3rd and wake up and feel good about it. I don't want to just vote for, the lesser of two evils. I want to have options. And I felt like you were an option. So I continue to look at your platform. I continue to hear all of the other voices, but no voice will I ever let be louder than God's. So, but you tell the people, why should they vote for you? Why should they look at your platform?
Let me even take it away from the faith-based standpoint. I'm so proud of my faith. I'm unapologetic about it. This is a country that says we have freedom of religion, so we shouldn't be condemned for being open about my faith. And the way that my faith has informed policy is I've taken the model of, if everyone is truly God's people, how do you serve them powerfully? Whether or not you believe like them, whether or not you live like them or agree with them, how do you serve them powerfully? And so when we tell people to do their due diligence, first of all, Lisa, I'm happy that you read, because as Americans, what we've done is given up the act of actually reading and researching. So we have people who come at us saying, you're going to split the vote. Who do you think you are? And when I tell you they have not spent a second on the website seeing if the policies we propose would actually serve them. So the first reason you research is because you need to know what you're really voting for. It's not enough to tell people we just got to get somebody out of office. We must be asking ourselves, what do we want in office? When you go to operationrestoration2020.com, you're going to see people-powered policy. We already know we don't talk like the left or the right because people tell us we've never heard policies and proposals put this way. To be pro-human means we let go of the divisive rhetoric of pro-life and pro-choice. Those labels have been contaminated. They don't allow us to have powerful conversation. Let's talk about what it really means to care about life from the womb to the tomb. That means now you got to not just think about the baby in the womb who has been undervalued. I do believe we have a stain on the soul of our nation because of abortion. That being said, that's only the first part of the equation. We should be equally outraged, for my pro-life friends, about a knee on the neck of George Floyd. You should be equally outraged about people dying at the border, about women being snatched off of assistance in the middle of COVID-19. All of that is caring about life. If we really care about choice, we should also want to make sure that women and families have the ability to reproduce powerfully. You should care about infertility rates at the VA. You should care about making sure that families can afford the lives that we're telling them they should feel like they should bring into fruition. So we're forcing, Lisa, a whole conversation, and both sides have been, quite frankly, pissed off because we're not talking about politics how they want us to talk about it, because we're actually fostering understanding, conversation, and solutions. And when you do that, politics as usual dies on the vine, because politics as usual is based on division and based on pitting us against each other. And if we're serious about recovering from this period and thriving, not just surviving, we're going to have to do things differently.
Absolutely. I mean, so we're dealing in a time with climate control, where Black Lives Matter, healthcare, so what is your thoughts when it comes to, when it comes to where we're at when it comes to climate control? Because that's huge. A lot of times people don't talk about it, but that's something that needs to be talked about.
You know why we don't talk about it? Because it hasn't been positioned powerfully for us. We always talk about climate change as this big existential threat off into the future. You're telling Americans to care about polar bears dying at the polar ice caps. We can't even wrap our heads around that, because in our own kitchen is water we can't drink. In our own neighborhood is air that we shouldn't be breathing. So we have to reframe the conversation to address people where they are. Remember Flint, Michigan? We only talk about it when? 2016 election year. They're still dealing with crisis, and Flint's not even at the top of cities who are dealing with lead in their water. Now we know that an abundance of lead in the water equals lower test scores for children in that area. So now we have a connection between climate, between environment, and education. Nobody's drawing those connections so that mothers and fathers can care about what's happening around them in their neighborhoods, in the air they're breathing. And also, we have to frame it as an economic issue. Because we have ignored climate change and have not done our due diligence of being ready to really provide alternative energy, COVID-19 hits, we shut down, carbon emissions are lower, we see the benefits of it, we're not in a position to even profit from it. We should have made ourselves the center, the producer nation, where people are coming to us for alternative energy, for cars that are powered alternatively. But because we have fought that, we've been reluctant, and we kept putting all of our eggs in the oil and gas basket, we're now behind the curve. So if you want to look at it from a humanitarian standpoint, talk about the people who are dying because of these deficiencies in our environment. You can talk about it from an economic standpoint. We can stand to profit and gain from it. You can also talk about it from the standpoint of faith. We are called to be good stewards, and we have not been good stewards of our land. In the beginning, you go back to Genesis, we are told to take care of this land, and we have not done so. So no matter where you look at it, these are issues we must address. You can use that same formula, Lisa, for economics, for healthcare, right? For help people build a pathway out of poverty, for criminal justice reform. And that's how we talk about things. And what it's done is it's disallowed arguments and it's fostered conversation. And that's the kind of climate that your president must create in order for us to have progress leading forward.
For those who are just joining us, I'm with Jade Simmons. She is running for the United States president and on the Independent Party. We welcome here at WIMG 1300, viewing on WPHTV, Mercer, as well as being in the encounter room. So, again, we just thank you for being here. If you can just share a little bit about your economic policy plan with us.
Of course. And let me also clarify, there is an independent party. It's called the American Independent Party. I'm actually running as an unaffiliated independent. You can't get any more independent than the way that we're doing it, Lisa. I'm literally running as an individual. We are not backed by any political party. And the reason we did that is we wanted Americans, for once in our lives, to be able to rest easy on election night knowing you don't have to wonder whose side the president is on. That for once you have an individual who says, I come to you with the agenda of creating restoration for our nation economically, spiritually, emotionally, environmentally. And my only mission is to serve as many Americans possible. Economically, we do that by providing opportunity to access to opportunity for more people. That means we have to now restructure our economy. Now, the Republicans will tell you she's talking about socialism. The left will say she's going to coddle corporations. They can't figure out what side they want me to be on. Each side is concerned I'm going to split their vote. But the way that I look at it is we have to have a humane economy, one that helps people see their way out of poverty. That's going to be increasing the minimum wage, which hasn't been raised since 2009. What do you own, Lisa, that still costs the same from 2009 now? You can't buy your house, your car, nothing for the same rate you pay. Yet we force Americans to still somehow find their livelihoods in $7.25 an hour. So I believe we have to raise the minimum wage to $15, something that I would look to do in the first 2 years of my term. By the end, I believe we should be at 18. I'm a small business owner. For us in Texas, the minimum wage is $7.25. My minimum wage is $18. I believe it is time now for us to go beyond the call of duty. And if we're serious about wanting to see people off of welfare, then you got to make sure when they get a promotion, it's not actually demoting them. Now they lose assistance, have to give back the promotion because they can't pay their bills. So we're talking about dignified welfare reform that's built in phases and helps people to get off of welfare powerfully without leaving them in a gap that they can't get out of on their own. I don't want their kids growing up thinking that welfare is the way of life. So you need new work programs that we need to create. All those companies we bailed out, remember that? All those companies have their manufacturing abroad. We need to now have, as a part of that bailout process, they have to come back, give us manufacturing jobs here, and train our American workers so that we can compete internationally, technologically. Right now, we are at a deficit. We've left ourselves vulnerable, and we had to go to China and Mexico just to get PPE to save our own people in COVID-19. So again, at operationrestoration2020.com, you'll see a lot of this economic policy laid out for you. And we're excited because it doesn't just serve one side. You'll see that the wealthy are served because they also have earned their way in this nation, but corporations must be held accountable. And so you'll see us not talking out of both sides of our mouths, but finally addressing the total situation. And that means that as we help people who are in poverty, we've got to make sure the middle class is not treading water, getting taxed more than corporations, that corporations pay their fair share, but are also incentivized to do even better for their workers.
Pandemic proofing is something that you believe in, and that's something that you have installed within your economic policy. Tell us a little bit about pandemic proofing when it comes to your economics.
Basically what I think is exciting is that ongoing emergency preparation, as daunting as that sounds. I know we want to return to normal, but the truth is, because we have fumbled the handling of COVID-19 so badly, normal is a long way off. I, for one, don't want to return to normal. I want to elevate into something new. And so what I believe is now pandemics are going to be a part of our future for longer than we want. I do also think we have genuine concerns about biological warfare because we handled the pandemic so poorly. Our enemies have been taking notes. And so I think that now means that this is a part of our life, meaning we have to constantly be in preparation. I see us building storehouses, new storehouses across the nation that are strategically placed, being able to use our growers and our farmers to give us inventory for that. I see us also becoming a producer nation that stocks the warehouses and storehouses of other nations for the future. What does that equal? Not only are we safer, but it equals new jobs. I've been saying I'm a creative and artist. We're going to have to create jobs out of thin air, Lisa. We don't get to just reopen. People keep saying, oh, when we reopen. Many of the jobs that were there before COVID-19 will not exist. Many small businesses have gone out of business. Moms and pops that were cheated out of opportunism that we saw take place in the first stimulus package will not be there. And so we're going to have to create new jobs, train new workers. and also be safe by employing more testing and tracing people. We have testing here that now is starting to run more like a financial racket than it's actually designed. It's supposed to be keeping us safe as a nation, and now it's turning into a profit game. Those are the sorts of things that you will continue to see if we elect politics as usual. So I'm excited about job creation and using job creation to keep our nation safe permanently in an ongoing fashion.
Thank you. We had heard just last week during the debate, I should say, I'm going to be kind, the debate.
The debate was okay.
The debacle. But anyway, the debate, and we heard the sitting president, he did not denounce white supremacy, nor did he even acknowledge that inclusion and diversity is something that even exists. What would you do? And, you know, I know that you have something called Shades of Breakthrough and with regarding racism, but if we can just expound upon that a little bit, that would be really great.
Yeah, you know, my job, I have realized, is to call truth to power to both sides, to the media, and even to the church. And while Donald Trump sat there and did not denounce white supremacy, Joe Biden did not defend his vice presidential candidate, Kamala Harris, by saying, wait a minute, you just gave a whistle, dog whistle, to the Proud Boys there. He didn't address that in that moment. Maybe he didn't know what it was, but I want to see a more of a fighting stance from Joe Biden. We're standing up for people of color is concerned. I feel like we give him a pass in a lot of ways while we hold Donald Trump accountable for this climate. This climate must be met with able, powerful opposition. And I'm not seeing that. So I believe now, I should say, I'm a daughter of a civil rights activist. So race is a second language for me. It is something I grew up speaking about. I'm from Charleston, South Carolina, which is unfortunately, as beautiful as that area is, we talked about it offline, Lisa, it's also now known as the place where, you know, the Mother Emanuel tragedy happened. Dylan Roof is from Charleston, and so that's my hometown. So I'm comfortable speaking about race, and I actually believe it is one of the most powerful discussions we can have. I think we have to move into, we have to call people's bluff from this moment. All those corporations who came out with their statements of solidarity, the NFL, the NBA, we got to call them on their bluff, and we haven't. We've allowed these statements to stand as progress, and they don't. I was just in Minnesota a couple days after I left. We got the news. They just named a street after George Floyd. Who cares? When we were traveling the nation, we drove, I don't know how many Martin Luther King Boulevard's bridges we crossed over. I will tell you, I would bet money that Martin Luther King did not give his life to have 100+ bridges and buildings named after him. He would rather know that all these years later, we were in a different place. And so as I watch my father, who has been on the streets before it was trendy and after people will go home, he will tell you that this is a bittersweet moment for him, that his daughter is now speaking about the same things that he's been fighting against for at least my 42 years of existence. So I think we need a new Department of Justice that is not politicized anymore. You put an attorney general in there, somebody like a Marilyn Mosby out of Baltimore, who dared to prosecute the police on the Freddie Gray trials. She's paying dearly for that right now with her reputation, her career. They're coming for her. And it's not that she was anti-police. What she was saying is families are equal to police. So let's have a real fair trial and call things what they should be. We must have police, law enforcement, I call reconstruction. I don't believe we dismantle and get rid of police. I don't think that's what we do. We must partner now and clear out the space to have no corruption. A good police officer will tell you no one hates bad police more than they do. They can't even do their job like they need to. So if you're serious about supporting police, then you must be serious about reconstructing the system. Qualified immunity has to go. You have to take away, you have to look at penalizing pensions. If you've got 14+ offenses like a Derek Chauvin, and you're still on route to have pension and retire peacefully and powerfully, that's not right. We need a national registry that tracks the offenses of these police officers so that we can see when they're getting 4, 5, 6 offenses. We need to make it easier for them to be fired. We need to have retraining powerfully for our police. We need to look at the ways that we recruit. And the way that we check backgrounds now need to specifically look for the possibility of discriminatory and racial behavior. And so I do that because I believe that police still have a place in our society. And if we're serious about supporting them, we got to be serious about reforming. Lastly, I think we have to call a thing what it is. When groups act like terrorist groups, call them such. So you would see one of the first acts is you have to name organizations like the KKK. That's a terrorist group. They've lynched Black people since the beginning of time, yet we give them the same status as the NAACP. These are the things that we have to start doing differently. And I'm not afraid to speak in that way because I also know that I'm a person that's able to speak in a way that unifies and restores. And I'm not confident at all that either of the two major party candidates can do the same.
Absolutely. So, we are in a time of unrest where people are so divided in this country in regards to, even when it comes to the COVID-19, what we're dealing with the pandemic. And now, we hear our president saying, hey, don't be afraid. I feel better than I have been in 20 years because, he's received cocktails of this new drug or, whatever it may he have received, but he's giving a false sense of security. What would you say, or what are you saying in regards to the scientific outcomes when it comes to the research and they believing that we could have a actual cure or a some type of vaccine when it comes to by November?
That's a real convenient date. I think we now must have leadership that does not politicize our most crucial issues. The reasons we failed ourselves during COVID-19 is because we allowed it to be politicized and we allowed ourselves to live out a red and a blue reality where a pandemic was concerned. And we saw a president who prioritized help and funding based on who was verbally supportive of him. We should have had a national blueprint strategy that then could have been customized on the state's level. I don't want to take away power from the states because even within the states, I spoke to a family in California. They were like, look, what's happening in LA is not what's happening in our small little town where we don't really have COVID numbers. They should be able to deal differently there. But because we didn't have a national blueprint and strategy, everybody's floundering. We reopened the schools without giving teachers a blueprint. They had to literally suddenly, they're already not just teachers, right? They're social workers. They're paying for some of their kids' supplies. Some of them are working 2 to 3 jobs to make ends meet. Yet we threw on top of that, figure out COVID-19 pandemic proofing for your classroom while you're at it. And then we threatened funding away from the schools who said, we don't feel comfortable opening. What we should have done is said, okay, use that funding to do better distance learning. Use that funding to prepare for a powerful reopening. So I think our greatest issue is in politicizing the issue. And I also think that because of that, we have cost ourselves credibility. So that vaccine coming out in November, I'm not going to be first in line for it. I'm not going to be first in line. And that's a shame because we know scientifically it normally takes 18 months to 2 years to come up with a vaccine. So now you've injected into this what should be a health and security issue. It's now a medical freedoms issue. So you're going to have people refusing to get the vaccine because they don't trust it. You've now infused more suspicion with the CDC. Are they making recommendations because it's science-based or politically advantageous? To get a COVID-19 test, now insurance won't cover your second test that proves you don't have COVID anymore. Why? Because it was too expensive. So now what they're telling people is when your symptoms feel like they're getting better, spend a couple of days off of medicine, you're good to go. And so that means we're prioritizing profit and cost over the safety of our people. So that's the new era that I want to usher in, which is one that prioritizes people over profit, personal agenda, and politics every single time, because I believe they all go together. If you prioritize your people, then you can prosper. But if you sacrifice your people, all you're going to end up doing is shutting down, decreasing credibility, and costing ourselves in the long run.
We're, dealing with a racial divide in this country, right? So it's always black and white. What do you say to those who are not white and black, you know, because I feel like sometimes I really do. Do you ever feel like that? It's like, hello, we do have Asians. Hello.
Do we? Are you sure?
I mean, you know, our Hispanic brothers and sisters, except, you know, the ones they talk about when it comes to trying to keep them out with the wall. You know, I mean, what do you say? What would you say to them?
Listen, it's a crucial moment in time between black and white. This has been a moment that has been coming for quite some time. And the only reason, and I hate to sound cynical, but the only reason George Floyd's murder had the effect that it did was because we were shut down in the middle of COVID-19. We couldn't ignore it. We couldn't move on. We couldn't pretend like it didn't happen. And I know that's the truth because a couple weeks later, you had the same thing in Atlanta. A couple weeks later, you had Blake, right? So the issue of him dying was not new. The difference was, for once, we couldn't deny it, and the whole world was watching with us. So that's why black and white are coming to a head. It's because the history of policing, unfortunately, has a very dark origin, which initially pitted black against white. And now we have to recover from that history. It initially described black people as being innately negative, bad, criminal. So that has persisted. And what you have is, in spite of all the good cops, you still have those bad seeds that bear bad fruit, which ends up being race-based murder and police brutality. That issue must be addressed. But if you go to OperationRestoration2020.com, you mentioned it, Lisa. You've done such incredible research, by the way. You mentioned my Shades of Breakthrough platform. It was because of what you just said. I had a sense that coming into the season, we would begin to make this only about black and white. And once again, Native Americans would be left by the wayside. We still have unmet, unfulfilled promises to those people. Because of that, small businesses would be left by the wayside. So you'll see Breakthrough on our page, Breakthrough for Native Americans. We'll be posting that this week. Breakthrough for small businesses, Breakthrough for mental health, Breakthrough for, get this one, nobody's going to be ready for it, Lisa, Breakthrough for boys, men, and fathers. Can we dare talk about the rights of men in an era where we are rightfully fighting for equality of women? You better do it. Whenever you begin to elevate one group, you must make sure there is not a deceleration or an inequality created in the rights of others. And I know my feminist friends are up in arms at that, and they say, but it's been so long. And my black friends are like, listen, we always care about everybody. It's our time. It is our time. Our time as humans. And so I believe I would be proud.
Yes.
God, so proud, Lisa, to be a president for all. I'm a black woman in classical music. I know what multiculturalism looks like. I know what it's like to be the only one in the room. You better believe I'm comfortable in every setting imaginable. I'm brought in from kindergarten to corporate, so I can speak to everybody about the issues and feel comfortable. But it is a season where the president must also unapologetically be a champion for the historically underserved. That does include a wide range of people. So yes, I do have proposals that are specific to African Americans, but that's not because I'm only going to be a president to African Americans. It's because for more than 400 years, that group has been uniquely underserved and now must be uniquely served. We must build in systemic justice. We do have specific platforms that address Hispanic Americans, that address immigrants, that address farmers, and also Breakthrough for young Americans. Millennials and Gen Z, nobody talks about this, have been disproportionately negatively affected by COVID-19 and the recession of 2008. So we talked about your fabulous children, but I bet if we sat them down, they would talk about the economic struggles they face that are different than my generation. We have really taken some of the rungs out of the ladder we're now expecting them to climb. They're staying at home longer. They're financially dependent longer, not because they're slackers, but because our economic system has been jacked up and uniquely disproportionately affects younger people. So we have taken an unapologetic stance at looking at the ways we can serve different people groups because it is time now to even the playing field. And we declare it is not reverse discrimination or reverse racism. This is now a time of restoration and reconciliation. And you don't get to do kumbaya before you do the diagnosis and actually build in solutions that are going to help more people than ever before.
You know, I love it because my whole motto is we're stronger together. And I love that you can't build one group up and then you have to elevate us. We need to, you know, and I love that. And I thank you for, you know, even thinking about that in your platform. I have 8 brothers, so, you know,
Yeah.
you know, I do have 4 sisters, but they tend to think I favor the guys more, but that's because I'm closer in age with some of them. And some of them, they just, you know, they're my older brothers, so they spoil me. But, you know, but let's talk about, you know, prison reform, because, you know, you cannot talk about it in our country now, because even now, I just had a pastor on my show a week ago, and we talked about the disparities for prisoners with COVID, you know, but just prison reform in general. We have so much going on in this country that, you know, I think that we forget that they're human sometimes.
We don't treat them like humans. And so if I'm speaking again to my people of faith, to care about criminal justice is not to be soft on crime. It's to be strong on redemption. You know, we serve a God that goes out of his way to make a pathway back. I don't know why. Listen, if I were him, there'd be a lot of times I'd be like, you know what, you people, but every time he always builds in these grace-filled pathways back. You can't tell people, pull yourself up from your, you know, by your bootstraps and be productive members of society. And then after they've paid their debt to society, you make it impossible for them to reintegrate. So we focus a lot on looking at how we can reduce the recidivism rate. We look at job training and real serious counseling for our formerly incarcerated. Our policies are informed not only by academics, but by people who have been incarcerated and by people who are still incarcerated. Because if you're serious about creating policy that meets people where they are, you better talk to people where they are. Private prisons have got to go. You cannot tie justice and profit together. It'll never work. It'll never work, because if your business model is based on you're paid by the amount of beds that are filled, you better believe you're going to hire lobbyists who are going to push for legislation that put more people in jail. And if you're serious about your boys, your men, and your fathers, you can't keep telling men to live up to their responsibility, and then you don't help them when they come out of jail and want to rebuild their families. They've got to have jobs. That means we're going to have to look at ways to make it so that we don't discriminate against felons who are able now to reintegrate into society. We've got to build a serious pathway back, pathway out of poverty, a pathway to redemption. And those are the things that we build into our platforms. And we're so proud. We're up like creating policy at 3 a.m, Lisa. I never thought I would be this energized, you know, with like understanding the criminal justice system and all these different areas. So when people say, what happens if you don't win on November 3rd? What are you going to do? The only answer I have is, first of all, we're focused on the day-to-day. We only have one goal, which is to win. We are politically viable. We are able to be voted on in the majority of states. We're doing our due diligence. But if somehow this doesn't end up at the White House, all I know is that my life will never be the same. I can never go back to speaking the room full of people who already can do for themselves in every way possible. I can never go back to just doing that. I love inspiring. I love being in high-powered rooms. I can already tell you're my type of people. We probably got the same books on our shelves and everything, but there is something that is so necessary right now. And I believe running as for president is not just about me ascending to one office. I believe that my presence here serves also the purpose of raising up other leaders who are ready now to lean in uncommon ways. I think there are people who don't know it, but they're going into politics, who don't know it, but they're leaving the big corporate job to go into education, who don't know it, but they're leaving education to create a business, who don't know it, but they're 40 and going to medical school. You know, this is a time where we are trading in our childhood dream. My original dream, Lisa, was simply to be a classical concert pianist. And God gifted me enough to be able to do that. I played in incredible halls. Uh, I played some amazing music. But
I
then he
heard
starts
you.
giving you,
I've been on YouTube listening to you.
thank you.
You incorporated with rap. I loved it all.
Yes, that's
I
right.
loved
And
it.
that was a shift, right? You know, where I thought my whole life be Beethoven, Bach, and
Yeah.
Chopin. And I remember, you know, in my other life, meaning like my daytime in college, my nighttime in college, I love hip hop. You know, I loved beats. I had a percussion and dance ensemble that I founded, but I never thought the two worlds would come together because one was very prim and proper. You know, already being black in that world, you had to be extra classical, whatever that meant. And I got curious as to how far could I push myself. And I began speaking in my concerts. That changed everything. I began playing with genres, bringing in a little bit of jazz, a little bit of experimental, and my audiences started to diversify. I didn't have a diversity initiative. All I did was start becoming more of myself, bringing all of who I was to every moment possible. The minister in me would come out in these concerts, right? The comedian in me would come out in these concerts. The daredevil who now raps in front of audiences, right? All of that came out. And what I saw was I was having a great time on stage, but the audiences were starting to go, maybe there's something I haven't been bringing to the table. Maybe my faith can come in this room with me too. Maybe I'm not too old to do this, or maybe I'm not too young to start this. And once I saw that was the effect, and this is for everybody listening, when you find out what your effect is, the mandate then is to do it again on purpose every single time. So even in running for president, I know that part of my mandate is to raise up others who are ready now to impact in bigger ways, to stand against the ridicule and the mockery and the doubt. And if you're people of faith, to believe bigger than you've ever believed before and lean into a moment and trust that you are ready for it. My resume doesn't look like Biden's resume. I don't apologize for it because the things that are on it are what is required of the nation right now. So I'm extremely confident knowing that this moment requires something different, and I'm proud to offer that. And we're seeing people now, Lisa, send us pictures of their ballots as they write us in. In Oklahoma, my name's on the ballot, so they're proud. They're like what you're saying. They don't feel dirty going to the polls. Yeah. They're excited. We're happy about that.
Yeah. I don't want you to go, but I know.
I know. All day, we can talk all day.
You have so much to do, but I want to really thank you for being on my platform and speaking to myself and my viewers, and thank you for encouraging us, because you just inspired me. I just want to let you know that just that quickly. It doesn't take long, but I want to thank you because I see the God in you, and I'm praying for you, and but no matter what happens November 3rd, I want you to know that you've made a difference, that you continue to make an impact, and you belong in every room that God takes you in. Wow. And I'm super excited for you. And again, it's an honor. But before we leave, is there anything that you want to tell the people, that maybe, I know there's so many things, because I wanted to talk to you about small businesses and,
I know. We do part
taxes and all.
Let's do a part two. Let's do a part two. Let's come back and do a part two, because it's important to touch the issues. And I also want to answer viewer questions. I don't know if there's at least one or two that I can answer before I go. But I think the main thing that I want to leave people with is, listen, we didn't cover this, and thank you for being maybe the first person that didn't cover this, which is the split vote thing. Listen, I'm not doing this recklessly. This is not about me. It's the opposite of a career move. We're going to have to rebuild after this if it doesn't work out, Lisa. Yeah. It's the opposite. What I'm doing now is a sheer act of obedience. And I haven't been promised anything. The one thing I was promised, I should say, was that if we just stayed on message, if we just cast a vision, if we just served people all the way to the White House, we already had victory. And we've seen it. We've seen people healed while we're out supposed to be campaigning, and we'll end up praying and put the pads down and get to work. We have run this as an anti-campaign, as a movement, and as a ministry. And what I would encourage people is just take the time before you come for me and assume my motives are wrong. Let me just tell you up front, Biden is not funding me. My Republican people are worried that the left is funding me. The Russians and Trump are not funding me. My friends on the left are worried he's doing that. Me and Kanye are not in cahoots. Listen, I'm just getting it all out there. We're not. Kanye started running in July, by the way, with not having filed his papers. Your girl's been here since January, didn't even announce until she filed her papers. So I waited until February to announce. I'm serious about this. So this is not me playing games. And what I would ask is that you take the time. The days we have left is plenty of time. Our conversion rate, Lisa, people find out about us. They spend a few minutes on our website and they decide we're their person. People watch one of these interviews and within the first 10 minutes, they decide we're their person. And what does that mean? First of all, it means God must be at work, right? To magnetize in that way. But it also means that people are craving something different. After the debate, the search for alternative candidates went up 400%. And what we predicted is if we just stayed standing strong, people will start coming to look for us. Because the closer they get to having to go into that polling booth, they're thinking, I don't think I can do it. I can't imagine either of our options leading us powerfully into the next moment. That's what people are saying for themselves. So they're taking their time and coming to find other alternatives. I just encourage you to do your due diligence. OperationRestoration2020.com. Hold me accountable. Don't vote for me because you like my hair or my shoes or because I'm black or none of this. Vote for me because it matches your vision and it resonates with your heart and your mind. And we dare you. We dare you not to be drawn in because we know this is what this time requires. So again, thank you, Lisa, for making the space, for daring, because I'm sure you got a little pushback for daring.
A lot of people aren't even going to respond. They're watching, but they're going to later. You'll see, but because they're again, like I said, some people thought it was divisive. Why? But my platform is for all. I don't think that we should ever be to a point where we as Christians, we don't hear it all before we can go to prayer. How can you go to, but I did my job, you did your job. And at the end of the day, he'll do his job. One man plant, one man water, he'll give the increase. So, and that's what we're going to wait on. And, but really quickly, I know that we have people who aren't maybe, they may be like, oh, is she going to push Christianity?
No. You don't have to. The role of the president is not to proselytize. If you want me to preach, invite me to your church, I'll come do that. But as president of the nation, and I am an ordained minister, like Lisa said, I've written a book on prayer.
Yes.
But as leader of the nation, the job is to serve, honor, protect, love, provide access. My faith informs the way I see people. What my faith tells me is that especially when we disagree, when we vote differently, when we believe differently, I'm supposed to work to serve you and honor you and protect you in spite of that difference. So my role, the reason I speak openly as a Christian is so that you can compare it and contrast it, quite honestly, to what we've been seeing on the right. I feel like my faith has been hijacked on the right. I feel like my faith has been silenced on the left. So I wanted to provide a safe space for people who are of faith. But the wild thing, Lisa, is agnostics, atheists are coming aboard because what they're seeing is a heart for people and a heart for service. And that is what my faith has influenced. The way that policy works is we create policy that serves as many Americans possible. Sometimes there's policy, many times, that doesn't serve me. Doesn't serve me as a Christian, doesn't serve me maybe as a small business owner, but this segment of the population needed that policy. And that's the kind of leader you want, who can create solutions for people who are not like them and who will determine to serve people who are living different lives than they are living. So no one has to worry about being proselytized or preached to, but you will hear me reference my faith because it is my source, it's my inspiration, and you should become curious about the source of inspiration for all of the leaders that you follow.
Amen. Awesome. Hey, well, thank you again. We have to end. I don't want to go.
I know, I know.
Again, part two will be coming. But, for those who are listening, this is your girl, Love Lisa, WIMG 1300 AM, Great Gospel in Trenton, New Jersey, 4-time Stellar Award winning gospel station, as well as you're viewing us on WPHY TV Mercer, and you're in the encounter room. And you were just listening to my guest. She's running for the President of the United States independently, Miss Jade Simmons. She also is an author of her book, Audacious Prayers for World Changers. She's a classical pianist, a servant of God. And, but most of all, people, she's for us, she's for you, she's for all. This is what she's saying. November 3rd, if you don't see her name on the ballot, they can write it in. So, and then, know your options. That's all. Know your options and give them your website and all your social medias pages.
It is operationrestoration2020.com. You can do your due diligence there, but also be with us. Facebook, Operation Restoration 2020, and Instagram at Official Jade Simmons. I release a lot of live video and I take questions in real time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Be blessed. Be blessed.
And listen, you guys know what I say here in the encounter room. You cannot have an encounter unless you have an encounter with God. Real change comes from a relationship with God. And if you don't know him, get to know him. Love you. God bless.
Yay.